Today, as you know, we're going to, this is a working session, and the goal for this morning is to really focus on some of the issues and topics that we covered, and really focus on it like a laser. And then from here, as you well know, we'll leave here this morning and go to a forum that our president, Bill Gosa, will be a part of, leading a discussion, and then that starts at 10. So, and that session is open up to some of the community leaders here in Jacksonville. So, to get started, I want to thank you all for being here. We have a great opportunity to really focus on some of the, I would call them, action items that we discussed yesterday. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President, Mayor Scott Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And before we get going, let's give Mayor Brown and the City of Jacksonville a round of applause. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Southern hospitality has been shining brightly. We appreciate it. We'd also like to thank once again Siemens. Tom, thank you so very much for bringing us together here. This is the great thing about this conference. I think what makes this a little different is, as Mayor Brown said, laser focus. What we want to do is we want to make change. We want to be agents of change. We want to come out of this activity, and then as we follow up in Orlando with an action plan that can be sold, can be implemented, can actually make a difference. And I think that's the one thing that makes this little gathering so significant, because we're not here just to talk about things. We're here to actually come up with ideas that we as an organization can get behind, walk up on the hill, and walk into the administration and say, this is a plan, it makes sense, it's something the public supports, it's something that fits in line with a nation-building agenda that we truly believe in, and it's something that is, and bipartisan isn't even really the right word, because it's something that's American and has been supported for decades, and we believe is needed now. And everyone, we believe that most of the Americans are behind us on this. So that's where I think we can really make a difference as a conference. So this morning, what we want to do is take what we heard yesterday, maybe take some other ideas you might have had if you did not get a chance to talk yesterday, or put your 2 cents in, or even if you did, if you want to repeat that or expand upon that, or however you want to do it, this is your opportunity. This is basically a brainstorming session and a session to throw things out on the table. Staff, Tom and his staff are going to be noting these things. We're going to put them together. We're going to throw all the ideas we can, and then try to form those into those combined with what's going to happen at 10 o'clock and try and form that into a cohesive, focused plan that we can then take to Orlando. That sound all right? Okay, Ron? Okay. So we'll turn it over to Tom Cochran. He'll give a little bit further direction, and we'll just open it up.
Well, let me say that this has been a great meeting for me, and also personally, professionally, and also for my staff. I told them when we came down here, we got to get them down there, we got to put the stuff on the table, and things would start to happen. That's the magic of this organization, when mayors come together with the private sector and the ports people like we have to create something. I'm going to go through some of the issues that I heard yesterday, and these are broad issues that need attention. We first need to remember there is a federal agenda, and we have to determine exactly if any kind of legislation is required. Secondly, we heard yesterday from Brookins and others talking about the Commerce Department and the commercial service. I heard also that grants are being given out to the states, and so we just need to turn that needle just a little bit our way to see if grants could come into the metro areas. The other thing is, we have not had everybody says, well, you got resolutions all the time at the annual meetings, but we have not had a strong resolution, a policy statement from the mayors on this issue of boards and ex-boards. And so we will be working on that and working with all of you. Within our own organization, there are issues from this meeting that we've heard. We've heard the success story of Akron, Ohio. We've got to make sure that mayors are even talking to their small businesses. I mean, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been saying, you need to talk to your small business, and we've had a whole initiative on mayors meeting. And of course, that had to do with the access to credit that brought the mayors together around it. So you'll be surprised at some of the mayors that really are not doing this. And so we've heard some examples of what Mayor Brown is doing with your business builders and what you did, how you brought those together. So we've got to have a set of meetings and forums where we can do like we've done everything else in this organization. That is, some people are doing this better than others, but so many people want to do it. There's a hunger for this, and it's got to happen. So I think that's a charge that we will be working on as we go forward. The other thing, which is another piece of this, and that is we're going now to what I call big politics, and that is we have election of the president this year, and Mayor Smith has talked about it. We've all have been talking about nation building, and so there's no question in my mind that we have to work to present to President Obama and to Mr. Romney, whoever it's going to be, that it's time, after we bring them war money home. Our position adopted in Baltimore was half of the money should go for the deficit and the other half should go for nation building. But we have to be very strategic about what we have in our program, in our agenda. And the Mayor Smith and I have been talking about that today. We know transportation and ports is there, and we know we've done some extensive work on what's needed with water infrastructure in this country. The big problem with water is leakage. You have wooden pipes in Oakland, California, and so people don't like to talk about that too much because you can't see it, like you get in a stadium. So we've got to be very smart and not let this nation-building agenda be a grocery list. We have to be very smart. And we went to see Mitch McConnell, and he said, I will totally help you with infrastructure. I will help you with infrastructure. So we have to define infrastructure in a smart way, and rather than just building more roads in South Georgia, they're going to asphalt the whole world down there. And we got to be talking about how do you move goods and services in and out of Atlanta and the airport. So know a little bit about Georgia because I have grown up there and watched it. So we're fired up, and I think this meeting, as I said yesterday, is a landmark, and we will leave it with the chair and determine exactly. We'll have to have working groups for some of this stuff, and we know what we all look like. We don't have to do teleconferences; it's too expensive. We can do it with conference calls and what have you. And so we will prepare for you, Mr. Chairman, sort of a working agenda with what we need to get done as we come into Orlando and really bring this issue full forward. So with those are just my mental notes from what happened yesterday. I was very encouraged by Amy's statement about the Commerce Department. And the problem we have is that it's not just this administration. When they start talking about trade, they start seeing the governor going somewhere. And so we've got to start talking about trade where we see Alvin Brown taking the metro agenda forward and Seattle taking King County. We've got to get them into that whole mode. And even some of the smaller cities who you turn around and I remember when Paul Helmke was the mayor of Fort Wayne, he used to have an eggs and issues breakfast, and he had people, all over Asia in Fort Wayne, Indiana, already trading. That was back, in the 90s. So there's a lot of stuff going on. We talk a lot about the COPS program, the CDBG. We have now opened up this part of the church to discuss imports and exports and how we help mayors get ready and get that 1% up higher. So we're committed to this, and we appreciate your leadership, Mr. Chairman, also Mr. Vice President, and all the mayors who came. We've been talking about this. You know, we're nighttime and daytime. We talk about it in the bar. We talk about it in the morning. And so I feel like we're going to come out of this meeting and be very proud of the fact that we're here, and we pledge our work to make it good for you. So those are my comments about what happened yesterday and what we need to do in the future. And we could just get comments from others. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. I would ask that I would direct you, Tom, and your team to take the lead on pulling everything together for our national meeting in Orlando, so we can have a national agenda that we can present to two of the candidates who are running for president. I think that's very, very important. My good friend Mark from Little Rock, I know you had some comments and ideas. I'll start with you, and we'll go around so that we can have some feedback. We'll just go right around, and I'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. As part of the strategy, I think the more we can associate this with the jobs that are created by virtue of this, the stronger our argument becomes. I know that in our area, it's been critical to an unemployment rate that is lower than the states, lower than the nation, substantially lower. We weathered the storm of the recession because of a port and because of our ability to attract major international businesses that desired to locate in the United States. And I think that the more we can tie in those and when you look at it, I mean, we've got a company that didn't make the reception on Thursday because we were announcing a $100 million capital investment at our port, an extra 200 jobs on top of about 550, so that in the last 36 months, we're talking 750 new jobs just from one single business that decided that they needed to be in Little Rock. And so I think that's, when you talk about trade and you talk about those things, it's important. I will tell a little parenthetical. About 2.5 years ago, the governor and I went to Paris. And I'm going to talk about this issue of and we didn't even pay for it. Okay, it was a trip that didn't cost the city of Little Rock any money out of our pocket. But I took a few critical comments about that in the newspaper because of that. But it resulted in Dassault Falcon Jet signing an additional 50-year lease agreement at our airport, so that we are solidified with what is now the largest industry of exporting out of the state of Arkansas, and that's aeronautics. It is larger than agriculture, and that trip was directly tied to that issue. The French had been over to see us several times. No one had ever been over there, and so those kinds of face-to-face relationships are critical, and I think the more we can show the results and the dividends from that, frankly, the better off we're going to be.
Thank you, Mayor Brown, and the rest of the members here. I'm extremely proud to be a part of this conference this weekend. I'm right down the road from my favorite city here in Jacksonville, and we've got some intercoastal waterways there that was once quite barged traffic. We've just had one plant to close that now there's large acreage for some water transportation inland type. We've also got some large acreage that's associated with the rail system, CSX. And it's been quite informative to see what the group has talked about this weekend. One of the things that I'm impressed about is that we want to come together, I think, as I use the analogy, singing off the same sheet of music whenever we go to the big houses up on Capitol Hill to ask our folks up there to help fund these projects, and in particular what we talked about these last couple of days. I think that's very important whenever we can sing from the same sheet of music. I believe that our folks up there in the big house will listen to us a lot more than if we're going up there individually. But collectively, I think we can get a lot more done. So thank you all again, and look forward to working with you.
Well, excuse me, Gus Morris from Fremont, California. Sat here yesterday, and Mayor Marks said we lack a national will to do things, and I think that's not the problem. The problem, we have a national won't. We won't do it. We won't invest in the future. And I thought about some things that are really important in our history, and the first thing came to mind was a couple of years ago I was invited to my nephew's wedding in Lockport, New York, which is the western end of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal was built in 1834 by DeWitt Clinton as governor. It was called Clinton's Folly. But here we are, 2012, it's still there. It's not doing the same job it did, but it still exists. The locks still work, and it still goes, almost 200 years later. Then in the toughest time in American history, the very most critical time, the nation was more scattered than it ever was before, ever will be again, the Civil War. During the Civil War, we built a transcontinental railroad. During the Civil War, we issued the Homestead Act that gave people the opportunity to get land. And we issued the Land Grant College Act, so all these state colleges around. All that in the Civil War when people are killing each other. But they had the courage to look forward. And today, we have people who won't spend it. And Mayor Smith talked about the debate, and they didn't talk about jobs or infrastructure. They talked about birth control, and people need to have a vision, and we need to create that vision. We need to give them something to grab and find a champion that will ride that horse through. So I think that this is a great start. We need to help the people who are supposed to be leading the country lead. I learned a long time ago the best way to get an elected official to do something, you don't ever expect them to have the idea. You give them the idea and then convince them it was theirs in the first place and let them go. And it works for us. It'll work for Congress and the Senate. So let's give them that ability to the idea and let them grab all of it. Give them all the credit. Let's get it done.
I think one of the most important things we've got to realize, and I'm state the obvious, we're living in a world economy now. And unfortunately, some of our constituents don't believe in that, or they don't take it to heart that this is a world economy now. We've got to compete worldwide. And so we're doing some things in the city of Tallahassee to make sure that we are competitive. And I think we all have to do that. One thing that was mentioned earlier, the travel to Paris. I traveled to, as I indicated yesterday, to China, and that was something that my constituents didn't have to pay for, but somehow it was viewed in a negative way. And we've got to somehow overcome that issue of when we travel abroad. Now, some of us, I know, travel, and they may be junkets, but the fact of the matter is a lot of them aren't. And that interaction on an international basis I think, is very, very important. I mean, the more they see you, the more they like you. I mean, the more they are willing to deal with you. So I think that's very important, and it's unfortunate that some of our constituents really don't understand that. I'm not so sure how to overcome that, but we really have to see if there's something there. The other thing that I thought was very good yesterday was the small businesses and the ability for them to export. And how do you train our small businesses? How do you get them the information? And I'm going to take advantage of, I can't think of the organization that was here yesterday that will come to they're going to Des Moines. Where's Des Moines? They're going to Des Moines next. And I'm going to call them and have them come to Tallahassee because I believe that small business exports and imports is a very good thing. How do they do it? And I think the things that they said were very, very good in that regard. And the other one that struck me is the 1% thing that I saw yesterday. That's somehow or another we got to address that issue of 1%. Only 1% of our businesses are doing exports. That's a shocking number to me. And I guess what we're doing will hopefully address that issue. Now, the other thing that, you know, I said several times yesterday, we need a national policy on freight, transportation, energy, and everything. I'm about to come to the conclusion that we can't do it. I don't think that we have the political will and want to really come up with national policies. I think we got so much political, partisan bickering that even to try and come up with a national policy on transportation, it's just like trying to come up with a policy on health care. You know, look what we had to go through just to get a health care initiative, and it's still not over. So I don't know how we deal with that issue because of the partisanship that's associated with anything that we want to do on a national level at this point in time. How do we do it? So although I think we need a national policy on freight, we need a national policy on transportation and energy, which would really guide us from the national level all the way down. I'm not so sure that the politics that we have today would allow us to achieve it. So I believe we have to take that into consideration as an organization and move forward the way we believe we have to move forward, and don't worry about a national policy, although it would be good. Let us do what we think is right and go right, and forget about the national policy thing. If we can get one, great. That's.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Again, I'm sure we'll be echoing your hospitality for a long time to come, and I wanted to, again, tell you how much we've enjoyed it. The only sadness is, you know, you do have to catch that plane back home, and looking forward to coming back and enjoying a little bit longer stay. So thank you very much, and your staff have been great from greeting at the airport right off the plane to the escort. Just been a terrific stay, and so thank you again very much. You know, one of the things that we continue to try to reach out to, and I know Tom knows this as many of us do, but the former mayor of Dallas is now the U.S. Trade Representative, and I'm not sure how and what might be a way to involve Ron Kirk and or his office in some of the discussions that we're having. And I know, you know, that a couple years ago, Hillary Clinton, for the first time, created an Office of Intergovernmental at the U.S. State Department, and I know we've had at several of our international committee meetings here in the conference, a lady by the name of Rita Jo Lewis, who's a proud graduate of the University of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, Brother Cochran, and would, I'm sure, keep us under that umbrella. So that's another office that perhaps maybe in some respects that we ought to enlist. I don't think there's a question in any of our minds, you know, with what we continue to read, not only with the competition for global energy and how that, you know, is having that and the geopolitics in the Middle East is causing our $4 gas. I think some of us maybe had a chance to listen to our friends on the other side of the aisle, on the Republican side, talking about how it's all our Democrats' fault that the price of gas is going up, but nonetheless, it goes up, it comes down, and it seems to go up and not come down nearly as far. And in large measure, it's because of the tensions that are going on, and those tensions, without a doubt, can be both ameliorated by the international connections in some respects that we have, but even more so by taking advantage of one of those negatives of what's going on now, and that's the rising global economy in terms of the quality of life, the purchasing power of, you know, particularly some of our largest neighbors in a global sense, India and China, and the ability of them to compete on the global market. We have, Mark mentioned the company that we celebrated adding to their workforce. Well, several years earlier in North Little Rock, Caterpillar opened a brand new plant and committed to having 600 jobs in the beginning. They finally reached that 600, and now they're working on a third shift with another 200 to 300 jobs. Two of their models, we're the road grade capital of North America, if anybody wants to add a title to North Little Rock, and so we're proud of that. But what we're even as much proud of is that two of those models of rotograders, the largest ones that Caterpillar is producing, are only made in our city. So they're available for global distribution, and the avenues of trade, particularly as we've talked about the opening of the canal and the changes that's going to bring, rising economic buying power, the position of the dollar, it all bodes well for if there is a time that the wave is falling on our shores, we should be on the crest of it and take advantage of it. And that's why that this meeting is so timely in terms of how we need to integrate ourselves. I mean, nobody needs to repeat the buying power, the economic power of municipal of our metro areas, and we could go on and on. So, to help us utilize our allies in the terms of Ron Kirk, or in the terms of the State Department, or perhaps the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, others, to me, there ought to be a consensus effort to reach out to some of those partners in helping us try to formulate a roadmap, or at least a path that we could perhaps follow that would enlist some of those allies that we have in underlining the opportunities that I think is absolutely critical in job reduction. Thank you.
Good morning. Just a couple thoughts from yesterday. I think that given the way the world is changing with communication abilities, you start a revolution in 3 days in another country, you change a form of government via the internet. This is going to empower this organization to let the federal government and our elected officials know how to do things. I've had conversations with Senator Wyden about this, and he said, pick on us, it's okay, and show us how to do it. And I think that there's a lot of resources within the federal government buried and hidden, and folks like the Brookings Institute and the 4 regional efforts are getting to see where those are. It's all doable, and it's not going to add to the national debt. And I think this organization can take a leadership role on this, and I would suggest that we make it a goal by 2015 that 1% is 10%. A nice, simple number. Let's add a digit to that. The win here is in front of us, and the one thing we have to remember, and somebody said it yesterday, this country knows how to win when it gets behind things, and I think this is extremely doable if we have staff resource to work with Amy and other organizations to put the blueprint together. This is not rocket science. You just have to know how to do it. And the visiting with the businesses, I do it quarterly. We have forums for them, training, mentors. Those are the things we need to share with one another and realize each region and each city has to win this thing. And I'm really excited about the work that's starting here. And I don't think we quite know what we stumbled upon here, but it's going to take us right back up. And we can't wait any longer. I know there's a city, I'll get off that soapbox about infrastructure, but if we can focus on this issue, other things are going to happen on the coattails of what we do here, and we just can't let it go.
Mayor Wild? Thank you, Mayor Smith. As we kind of wrap up here and we start working on what the conference's policy or their position on this issue is with ports, I'd just like to kind of remind the 3 things I threw on the table yesterday, which are specifics. Is number 1, I'd like to see as part of our strategy that the conference, we encourage our legislators to adopt the Short Sea Shipping Act of 2011. It's a bipartisan bill. Right now it's in the House Ways and Means Committee. This effectively eliminates tax on commercial cargo other than bulk. What this will do is this will encourage shippers to keep stuff on boats as opposed to putting it in the back of semis and putting it on our roads and highways. It doesn't create a budget issue because currently every piece of freight that comes in has already paid that harbor tax, and if they put it in the back of a truck, right now they don't have to pay additional tax. If they put it on another boat, they pay the tax again. So the tax has already been collected. And once again, it's got bipartisan support, so I'd like to see us get behind that bill. Number two, we talked a little bit yesterday about that Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. There's $6 billion there, and we heard that perhaps that $6 billion is gone, but we need to find out if in fact that is in fact, and if it's not, we need to free up some of that money. We also need to look at moving forward as putting the money going into that trust fund in a lockbox so it can be used for what it was meant to be used for. And the other thing is just we need the federal government to take a look at post 9/11 the effect it's had on shipping, and we've made tremendous progress at the airports. We need that same progress in the ports. We need to find a way to let these low risk boats and these trusted shippers move through the system safer. And then the last thing is just a personal thing is, as we talk about nation building, maybe it's because I'm from Detroit, but it's a little ironic that we use federal policy to force the automakers to make vehicles that are more energy efficient and better gas mileage. As we focus on infrastructure, I think we should be using that same lever on the manufacturers that are going to create our new bridges, our new roads, our new transportation. We should be forcing them through policy to create bridges that last longer, roads that hold up to today's traffic. And like I said, maybe that's just because I'm from Detroit, but it's worked there, and I think it could work in the manufacturers for transportation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, yeah.
Good morning, all. Actually, to avoid redundancy, I wanted just to wholeheartedly echo all the comments so far, and I understand that the work ahead of us is just starting, and the fact that we are here is a relationship building for not just us as mayors, but the relationship that we will continue with our trade partners across the ocean, and also with many of the sister cities organizations, as well as counterparts overseas that we will be dealing with in moving the metro ports and export side of our focus. What I'd like to say that in addition to job creations, I think the other component of the importance of our constituents buying into the need for this outwardly looking and going abroad is the fact that without economic growth in our cities, we will not be able to provide the services and the needs of the communities. And I think if our constituents understand that in order for us to generate the revenues that is necessary to sustain the services that our community comes to understands and requires and expecting, we will not be able to service them and be able to deliver those promises and all of those services unless we have the economic growth and engine and revenue to sustain that. So without that, because I don't know any other cities, but my city, we have to be self-sufficient. We have to generate the taxes in order for us to provide all the security, the law enforcement, the fires, and all of that our citizens are depending upon us to do. So I think that's a message that we need to also include. Is I know the job creation. If our businesses are not successful, I don't know where they're going to be creating these jobs. And with this most economic downturn, most businesses are pretty streamlined and efficient to the point where they don't see replacing some of these job loss. And if the companies are better off today than it is more profitable it is 5 years ago. So I think that to have them come back, these high-paying jobs, you have to have new avenues to generate them. So it's important that we craft that message in addition to job creation, but it's the economic side that we need to stress upon. The third thing, excuse me. Oh, the third thing is that by having this discussion, I hope that from this point forward, that U.S. Conference of Mayors will be a resource for the mayors who are, or for the city, any of the cities, trying to give them a roadmap, a sort of a business plan to reach out as to who do you go to for resources, to such as utilizing the some of the key identification from the Brookings Institute as to what federal agency can assist, state agency, as well as foreign agencies that can assist in bringing our businesses to the world stage. And I think that would be something that we should also put in as part of our service to let all the cities have an access to that, because I know we're on the West Coast, have plenty of resources to go with and have constituents who have the ability or the knowledge as to where to get that, but some of our more inland cities may not. So I would hope that we can also incorporate that as part of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. We're at our best when we lead the country by doing amazing work in cities and then dragging along the federal government and eventually the states and others, as opposed to leading with calling on everyone else to do stuff. And so I really appreciate that we've had a lot of actionable ideas, not just for telling Congress, to make investments and telling Congress you need a federal policy. This is a huge priority, even though, as Tom mentioned yesterday, this is our first work on this in 80 years at this level of engagement. And so I also appreciate that this is much bigger than Panamania, right? It's that entry point for the conversation is really important, and it's also helpful because there's been a lot of analysis and there's a lot of data, and a lot of the big companies have focused on that question, and so has the country. But this is much bigger than that, and certainly for the conference, it might be a baker's dozen of cities that are really grappling directly with the Panamax-related questions around vessels of that size. But there are dozens and dozens of scores of cities in the country that are engaged in this work at a broader range. And so my port's principally bulk and break bulk, although we're handling containers on a barge basis from the Panamax-capable ports in the Bay Area. But thinking about the broader range, which we started to do here at this session, but to think about the broader set of ports beyond just the big ones, and thinking about the system that is involved, I think is really critical. And then beyond that, so when we talk about goods movement as a broader range than just freight itself, goods movement is getting it from port to port, but it is also, as we've talked about, rail and trucks. But even within communities and metros, one of our significant challenges is the movement of goods from even the truck distribution centers on the UPS trucks, or the little trucks, right? So as you peel this onion back further and further and further, you find that there's a lot of areas where we've got to build our competitive strength, infrastructure and systems in metros to support the movement of goods, because frankly, our transportation policies are obsessed with people. We're all about commutes. Our performance metrics are all about commute times and air quality. But goods movement is about more than just the containers on the ships, and there's a role for cities of every size to be playing in that dynamic. And so one of the ideas that came up yesterday was this sort of a toolkit for mayors. 5, what did RT say in only RT style? 5 logical things that a mayor could do. But 5, in the same way that we've done in so many other areas, developing little pamphlets for mayors that give you some easy access points and entry points into this conversation. Because part of what we can be doing outside of LA, Long Beach, and Philly, and New York, and Jacksonville is building the national case for this by doing at the local level. And if all of us are doing a couple of things, that will contribute to building the momentum that we need nationally. At the national scale, on the sister cities thing, which did come up, and I haven't heard too much conversation about it today, I think there's, we ought to explore that potential. There's something there, but I would encourage us and Tom, given his connections with the leadership there, to really think about that critically, right? And in a data way, think about, if we were to make the investments of energy and time in helping the Sister Cities program become more effective. Could we make it more effective enough to a point where it would be really useful? I mean, because there's a lot of things that we and Tom's team could be working on. And I'd be hopeful that sister cities could be an effective part of that toolbox, but we ought not just run at it because that's something that we're familiar with and make a largely ineffective program into something that's only smallly ineffective when we could be doing some higher payoff activities. So I think between now and the June meeting, some are cognizance about what really the potential is there. On the federal piece, there are three specific areas for the resolution and for our advocacy work. I think we could benefit from paying some attention to, a lot of which came from the core presentation yesterday. One is this notion of we have to be more efficient on the regulatory and red tape side. This idea that it takes 6 or 8 or 10 years just to get to an authorization for a project when somebody else can build an entire port. That stream and the work that the Corps is doing on the 333 initiative is a start, but really pressing that case that even the money that we're already spending a lot of it's being wasted, and we're spending it way too late for it to have an impact in terms of our infrastructure competitiveness. Second is getting those agencies to work better together. I mean, I'm thrilled that the Corps is in the room when Tiger evaluations are being evaluated, but that's pretty ad hoc. And so the OMB or others who are contemplating convening the federal government to work just as they have on the whole sustainability issue, do that same thing on exports and trade and freight and goods movement. I think we ought to be supportive of that, of OMB and the Corps and others who are trying to corral the federal agencies to work more seamlessly in that area. And then lastly is this post-earmark era. So we've heard, we know that the Corps and other agencies are going to have a lot more responsibility for how to allocate money in a post-earmark world. We ought to be helping to define what that looks like, right? Is it just that Jim and Steve and some analysts inside the Corps decide for America where those investments get made, or invent some new indicators and metrics? Or should mayors be at the front end? We've been very active in fighting for earmarks, but now I think the conference, we need to be active in defining what that really means and how, if it's going to be allocated in some administrative way, how those funds are going to be put to use in the most effective way to advance our trade agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. You bring up an interesting point, this whole discussion about earmarks. It amazes me how Congress is basically abdicating their responsibility and turning it over to the executive branch. I don't get that, but in many ways I think that could create opportunities for us to better define the policy. Okay, as we wrap this up, we got Tom, you want to say something? Yeah, we got 3 more, and we got about 10 minutes to get through. So let's go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
2 quick things. First of all, thanks for being part of such a thrilling conference. 2 quick things from an outside perspective from Siemens, and a recommendation and an observation. What we've heard yesterday, we live in a world economy. We are not alone. The speed in the world economy and development speed is really good. So my comment recommendation is, as also Mayor Christopher said, we need to be really quick if we want to develop infrastructure. We heard that in China 7 years ago there wasn't even a harbor. Now the biggest harbor of the world is there. We have heard that the world trade will increase and significantly, and we need to be prepared for that. So I really encourage you all, put your heads together, push it forward, and really be quick. Infrastructure projects doesn't happen tomorrow. It takes 3 or 4 or 5 years until they are in place, without all the planning non-considered still. So just encourage you on speed. Secondly, an observation on the small and medium enterprises and exports. Really a thrilling thing what you all do with your sister cities. And the observation is, I think if you share information with what foreign companies you trade and really do this commonly and share all this information, I think all of your small and medium enterprises could benefit from the experience of the other cities, what they have done. Just an observation. Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas. Mayor Brainerd.
Thanks, Siemens, again for helping with this conference. It's a good thing. Jim Clifton, who's the president of the Gallup organization, just wrote a new book about jobs. And the title is The Coming Jobs War. In it, he reviews quickly the world population. 7 million people rising. There's about 3 billion people who want a job on the globe. Only 1.2 billion have what are called formal jobs, not trading a chicken for coal, but where they show up and get a paycheck and work at least 30 hours a week. That means that 1.8 billion people don't have a formal job under that definition. It's been as we look at history, we know how successful countries do it. They have infrastructure where they can move goods and commerce. If we can't do that, we might as well give up. We've got to figure out strategies of bringing Congress's focus and the administration's focus to the fact that we need the best infrastructure for commerce in the world. Otherwise, those jobs aren't going to be in this country in the decades to come. They're going to go to those places where there's 1.8 billion people without jobs because they've got the incentive to improve things. We cannot sit back on our success of the last century and let our infrastructure depreciate and decline. It's just absolute something we have to do as a nation. And I think our role can, first of all, do it well in our cities. That's going to help. By example, we show others how to do it. But we have to lobby. We have to get the press and the public focused on infrastructure. And that's where we have a unique, as U.S. Conference of Mayors, I think we have a unique opportunity to impact media across the country in a very quick amount of time. We all started writing articles, started talking about the need for infrastructure. And we know what the people in Washington respond to. They respond to what's in the press and on TV. And so if we can focus that discussion and get their attention turned to this, we'll have done a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And the best, saved for last. Mayor Donovan.
I'll wrap this up pretty quick, but in our area, there's an oil and gas find called the Eagle Ford Shale. It's been described as the greatest oil and gas find in the history of Texas. It's doing some tremendous things for our economy right now. It's just cranking up. We just made a deal with the Chinese seamless pipe manufacturing company. They're investing over $1 billion. This is the largest single Chinese investment in the United States. There's an Italian polyresin company that's finalizing $1 billion deal right now, all driven by this oil and gas find. And, we're staged for a tremendous amount of growth in our area and job creation. And what I keep hearing from the petrochemical plants and some of the refineries is the struggles they're having with EPA to work through the permitting process, to ramp up, to be able to accommodate this volume of oil and gas, and to create more jobs. I'm also hearing, the Jones Act has created some obstacles in the cost for dredging and maritime use. So, I'm not an expert in that, but I would suggest that it's probably time to take a look at dissecting that in a way to see what obstacles are in the Jones Act that are driving the cost for dredging and other maritime use up, because it's vital for our ports to be able to accommodate this 50-foot plus draft that's required for these ships of the future. But with that being said, I applaud everybody for their hard work this week. I look forward to what we're going to do in Orlando, but I think staying in line and communicating with each other is vital to keep this process going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, mayors. Great comments here and a lot of action points and things that I know Tom was taking notes furiously, as were members of staff, so thank you very much. Now, as we move into the session at 10 o'clock, this is not a repeat of what we just did, because the audience will be much broader. There will be local business leaders and others from the Jacksonville area involved. But the discussion will be led by Mayor Villaraigosa and Mayor Brown. And what they're going to do is after their statements and including some of the statements from local officials and business people, they're going to ask for mayors to step up to the microphone to add to the discussion. So please do not feel shy, and I know there's most of us in here who aren't ever shy about saying anything. But please, even if you said something in this meeting, participate, and because it's a little different audience that we have now at 10 o'clock. So don't feel shy or feel like you're repeating yourself if you get up and say same thing or add to it in this next meeting. I just want to make sure that that I gave you that little sound or that little encouragement, because this is a different forum, the meeting we're coming into, and more expansive, and others outside of this group need to hear what we're saying too. Yeah, Mayor Hayes.
This is it, right?
Take it with you, because this next session will last till about, I think we'll get out at 11:30, right? And then we'll be done. And I know a lot of us are scrambling to get to the airport after that. So thank you so very much. And upstairs in a little over 5 minutes, or downstairs on the second floor in the ballroom in 6, ballroom 6. Ballroom 6 in 6 minutes. Easy to remember. Thank you.